Why should Good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you all to Plenary Session 5, Building a Resilient Future, Lessons from Leading Innovators. Can we have the video for the session, please? Thank you. May I now call upon stage the panelist for the session, please? Would request Mr. Rahul Garg to take the session forward, please. Thank you.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to the session, Building a Resilient Future, Lessons from Leading Innovators. I am privileged to moderate this session along with some of the marquee unicorn founders that you can get into a room. So firstly, let me introduce quickly my co-panelists. Mr. Abhiraj Bal, co-founder and CEO of Urban Company and chairman CII Unicorn Forum. Varun Alag, co-founder of Mamaearth, a brand that many of you use. Gautam Kapoor, co-founder and CEO of Ship Rocket. If I look at the startup ecosystem, and you saw in the video, startup ecosystem has become synonymous with innovation, synonymous with bringing new consumer services and products to your doorsteps. It has become synonymous to businesses looking at using digital technology in innovative ways across sectors, whether it is logistics, whether it is manufacturing, and so on and so forth. Some of the stats that we look at today from the startup ecosystem is, in the last 10 years, we have been fortunate to create 100 plus unicorns in the country. India is the third largest startup ecosystem across the world. This has happened in the last 10 years. There are 100,000 plus startups today that are present across the country. The recent report that we did as part of the CII Unicorn Forum started to throw some very, very interesting insights in terms of contribution that startups are having towards the economy and job creation. Such examples. Now, beside that, I think if I take the example of some of our panelists, I think it is very important to highlight how each of their product and innovation is touching lives of many Indian consumers and businesses on everyday basis. For Abhiraj, if I speak, I think many of you would have used urban company services, whether it is the electrician, whether it is the beautician, all of those. Nobody could imagine 10 years back that you could have reliable service, and which a serviceman entering your house and providing services on a recurring basis, and you feeling comfortable, safe, and with a high quality and degree of service that you can provide. With Varun, again, Mamaearth, I think a unique blend of how a product which is catering to a consumer demand as well as catering to a sustainability need, and how we become more and more organic and move away from artificial use of various chemicals and products inside the organization. And then companies like Shiprocket, Gautam that he leads, and mine, Moglix, I think we are behind the scene companies. Shiprocket enabling many of these products getting delivered without necessarily many consumers knowing that the product is being delivered by them, and many of the e-commerce companies using their products on a for those deliveries to the end homes, and Moglix, which is powering manufacturing companies and infrastructure companies across the country. How do they make their processes efficient? How do car manufacturers, how does chemical manufacturing, metal and mining, how do those manufacturing companies become more and more efficient so that those products reach consumers faster? So again, welcome all of you. A very privileged panel. We are going to use 30 to 40 minutes to anchor the discussions with some of the common questions that we think the audience may find interest. And then I want to leave 15 to 20 minutes open for many of you to ask questions to the panelists as we go along. So with that, I'll start with the first question. I'll join the dais. So Abhiraj, I'll start the first question with you. 10 years back, nobody could imagine the kind of organized gig force that you have been able to create, both from training, hiring, how do you do service delivery, so on and so forth. And I know it's not an easy task, and even if we were to get a plumber who is not from urban company, it will have a variety of services that will get delivered. So I want to speak through what are the challenges on building this gig force that you have done over the last 10 years, and what do you think over the next few years needs to be done, both from policy framework perspective or education perspective, to make it larger and larger?
First of all, thank you, Rahul, and thank you, CII, for inviting me on this panel. I think in our sector, the single biggest challenge that we have seen is organization and formalization of the service ecosystem at scale. Today on the Urban Company platform, in India, we have close to 57,000 service professionals across 25 trades in over 53 cities. And even a city is not a monolithical city, it's actually broken down typically into 30 to 40 micro markets. So we have to actually balance those 25 tradesmen in about 2,000 plus micro markets across these 53 cities. And that's a complex and challenging task. And since we stand for high quality service delivery, reliability, it means we have to backward integrate and invest in training. We run over 200 training centers across the country. We have an in-house team of 400 trainers. And in many of these trades, we train people from scratch. So when they come to the platform, they don't have a prior background in the trade. And we are training them from scratch in fields like cleaning, beauty, massage, AC service and repair now. So training is a heavy investment that we have to put in. We also have to invest in upgrading them and formalizing them. A lot of them, prior to joining the platform, will belong to the informal and unorganized ecosystem. They would be at the behest of a local contractor, local thekedar, some shop. Many of them will not have a CIBIL score, for example, so they wouldn't be accessible to the financing ecosystem. So we have to change that by first underwriting their loan from our books, and then over time helping them build financing history so that they can get a business loan, vehicle loan, home loan. they wouldn't uh, have any insurances in place. So our platform will provide free of cost to them life insurance, accidental insurance, and health insurance. They wouldn't have access to the right tools, the right chemicals, the right products. That entire ecosystem has to be enabled. So it's a journey of actually transforming this unorganized and relatively informal individual, but who has a lot of aspiration, who has a lot of potential, into a formalized, high-quality micro-entrepreneur who makes a good middle-class living, who has dignity of labor, dignity of life, and who also goes about delivering high-quality services to end consumers, because that's what eventually we are all trying to do. I think we're on that journey. We are nearly 10 years in, 9.5 to be precise. We have built a hand-picked, high-quality fleet of 57,000 people, but we think, the opportunity is immense. There are actually millions, if not tens of millions of people in these trades in India. So in some sense, we've only touched upon less than 1% of what the opportunity canvas is. And we're excited. We're excited by the journey ahead, and we're excited by the potential of delivering high-quality services, but in a fashion that is sustainable for our ecosystem, for our service professionals, creates good jobs for the country. That's what energizes us.
Fantastic. Great to hear. I didn't know the 57,000 numbers, so great to hear the number of jobs being created. So I'll move to Gautam, and you touch e-commerce on the last mile delivery. So I think for the audience, it may be great to describe how you're touching their lives and shipments on a daily basis. And then as you continue to build it out, what are the different challenges that you encounter, and how do you go about training your own workforce to deliver that experience?
I think I'll quickly start with what we do so that everybody gets the context. ShipRocket is more of an ecosystem technology and the base of it is a technology which is building essential parts of the ecosystem of being able to sell online and for somebody to get a good experience to buy online. Typically that experience was largely delivered by large marketplaces that we know of. And beyond that, customers will not go out and buy from small websites, either trust issues or not being able to know when will it get delivered, how fast it can be delivered, is there a good return experience or not. All those things were broken, and typically they're broken today also, but a company like ShipRocket is trying to make sure that all the parts from when you actually land on a website, when you see a promise that, okay, when will it get delivered, to ordering the goods, having a good experience of checking out on the website, then getting your products, and then if you have a complaint or return, you want to return the goods, and also giving a good return experience. When we say that this seems like easy, but there are, a company like Amazon would have about 20% of their workforce doing this on the HQ level, and then there's a massive supply chain team. So our job is to make sure that we are able to provide all these essential inputs to a business, easy to use, and they don't need to make any investments upfront, and eventually being able to use it easily, and then be able to deliver the similar experience what a consumer is getting from a marketplace. So it's always changing. You always change. The experience is always developing, and then you have to, as a platform, keep evolving. So that's primarily what we do. Our vision we service about 100,000 businesses. What that means is that 100,000 active businesses use the platform to get orders, ship orders, and manage their customers' experience. So it's a very important number for us because we always believe that SMEs in India are a very important essential fabric for the entire the country to grow, right? And a lot of manufacturing, a lot of trade today happens by small businesses. We need to empower them, being able to compete with a large marketplace, being able to put their product out there to the customers. So servicing them is our main target, and we believe that this market is constantly growing, and we've been seeing that. We started with a meager few hundred customers, and we are about 100,000 customers today. So it's a large number there.
Fantastic. So the numbers are going up. So let me turn to Varun. I think Mamaearth is a brand now very well known to the Indian consumers and all of us using and continues. But I think as you started, I think you picked up a very interesting idea that how can a brand be built around sustainability and all the positive things we like to do, but we are somehow not able to do. So talk about, I mean, how are those sort of, how did you pick it up, pick the space, how did you think about growing, creating it, and competing with some of the largest brand companies in the country to creating Mamaearth as it stands today?
Hi, thank you first of all, CII and Rahul for having us on this panel. So when we started this journey, it really started from a personal need. We couldn't find the right kind of products for our son, Agastya, and that made us quit our jobs and start a company which can provide natural, certified, safe products for babies in India. Of course, after launching, what we clearly realized were two things. One, that while there are a lot of brands who were serving or selling to Indians, there were not a lot of brands which were building for India or crafting for Indians, right? And all said and done, something like beauty and personal care is very cultural to us, right? Our mothers, grandmothers, right, have been teaching us kitchen logics, right, of what to do and what not to do, right? And nobody was really going in there and understanding those needs and crafting based on those trust beliefs which existed in the society, right? And using the local ingredients, hence be it turmeric, be it chickpea, right? And a lot of those ingredients which go into our cultural nuance, right? And the second, of course, thing that we realized was that this is the century of why-based brands rather than what-based brands. And people don't want to buy you because you sell a product. And people want to buy into you because you believe in something, because you stand for something. And which is where we felt that, running the business sustainably, and more importantly, doing things as you grow, and which serve the community, which are in the benefit of community, and is going to be something which will connect with consumers emotionally. And what we found broken in that entire system, which we fixed through technology, was that while a lot of companies talk about doing good, but their ability to connect it back with the consumers transaction or their consumers relation did not exist, right? So on one hand, you're just selling a product. On the other hand, you're talking about, hey, we do this good thing as well, right? And we said, you're finally able to do a good thing because consumers are buying from you. And if you're not able to show that impact directly to them, then what's the point, right? So I think that was the biggest difference that we made in our sustainability approach, right? And now, for example, for any of our brands, and we have 6 brands now, and any of our brands, and they have different purposes. So, for example, Mamaearth has the purpose of planting trees, and if you place an order on our website, we actually connect it back to the tree that we have planted, and we send you an email in which there is a picture of that tree, geolocation of that tree, and you can actually check the difference that you've made, not just to yourself because you bought a great brand, but also to the community because you bought from a brand which cares. So I think that's been the underlying sense of how we believe sustainable brands can be a future of how corporates change community and impact communities, and why consumers will be willing to give preference to the brands which do the right thing. So I think that's how we've been looking at it.
No, fantastic. And I didn't realize you were able to connect it back to the plant. So that's very, very interesting. So turning to Abhiraj, I think one of the themes of the Unicorn 2.0 has been the startups who are able to scale internationally. And I think Urban Company is one of those examples which has been able to, beyond SaaS, take a company which is commerce, operations heavy kind of company, scale it into few markets. And this is in a gig force kind of example setup. So it would be great for audience to learn what has been those learnings around regulation, workforce, that you feel were very interesting for you over the last few years about scaling internationally and in a space which is very people and blue collar, people oriented space?
At the outset, I must mention that we are still very early and nascent in our international journey. We are only present in 3 countries outside of India, all adjacent countries, UAE, Singapore and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. For us, I think when we thought about venturing outside of India, we wanted to see markets which are somewhat similar to India in terms of their market architecture, consumer behavior, consumer pain point, and supply side dynamics. Regulations will always be a little bit different. Exact service needs of consumers will be different. But broadly, were these do-it-for-me markets or do-it-yourself markets? If it's a do-it-yourself market like the West, our model typically will struggle a bit. And we tried experiments in some Western markets as well. But if it's a culturally more do-it-for-me market like India, UAE, most Eastern markets are that way, then we saw that there's a potential. And these 3 countries, I would say our experience has been pretty decent. UAE was our first market outside of India, and we've been there for about 5 years now. We've done fairly well. Market is also at the brink of profitability, and it's a reasonably well-known brand in UAE. Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Singapore are much younger markets for us, so still in investment mode. It does require patience to build internationally, and it does take focus away from India for some time. And so, one of the things I would advise entrepreneurs is that India is a huge market, and it's growing faster than any other country out there today. So we're the world's fastest growing economy. We're amongst the largest economies, so there's a lot of opportunity here. And so have a very high bar, especially if you're in consumer, when you decide to venture out, and make sure you've done at least reasonable justice to the India opportunity before you venture out. And if you venture out as well, I think it's useful to first try and win in markets which are adjacent and similar, and see that over time can your product reach a level where it can compete at a global scale. That's been our experience. It takes investments as well. For a very long time, we were in the red because our India profits were not yet enough to offset the losses we were making internationally. And each market that you set up, it takes reasonable amount of investment in terms of team, in terms of local know-how, etc., brand building, before that market turns a positive. So be prepared for that is sort of my 2 cents.
Yeah, fantastic. I'll switch to Gautam. I think we are living in times where 10-minute is now the new bar set up for e-commerce. So, and I'm sure as a logistics company, you would have to think about it, and does it become 5-minute in future, or so on and so forth. So what does it mean, and then how do you deal with those kind of challenges in terms of both time, perfect delivery and perfect returns?
I think it's I think I would like to answer this question in a very different way. And when all these quick commerce companies came about, everybody thought they're bound to fail because there is no demand. Why would you need your vegetables in? You need vegetables in 5 minutes, but why do you need a pair of footwear or a earphone or earplug in 5 minutes? I was quite a believer because I thought it was not about need; it was about spending money and realizing the goods that they purchased quickly. So that's set aside. I think the supply chain has preceded the requirement from the customer. It's not the other way around. It's not that the customer was asking for it, and then the supply chain or the capability to do it happened. I think it was a fantastic idea with all these companies doing that, because they understood there was some inherent demand or need in a Indian. Several consumers across the world also have the similar need, but no company is at that scale or profitability as Indian companies. So it is the other way around. So the interesting part is the supply chain can do it, right? It's also if you look at the supply chain, it's largely gig based, right? Now you're ordering, if you're ordering from a Blinkit or a Zepto, or you're ordering from a Zomato, a very similar supply chain is working. And by the nature of the supply chain is simple, yet very it's not complex, because it's very short duration. You have to pick it up and you have to drop it. The real supply chain is behind it, of getting the inventory closer to the customer so that it can be delivered fast. So there's a lot of demand, there's a lot of technology there. It's also what consumer is asking for. I think that is where the real technology has gone into the supply chain bit of it. Beyond that, I think the rails of doing a 15-minute or a 30-minute food delivery, or doing a 8-minute delivery for your goods you order from Blinkit and Zepto, is largely the same supply chain. Not exactly, but it's about 80% the same supply chain. It opens a lot of opportunity. Now, if you're typically, I don't know if everybody looks at it like that, but what these companies are trying to do is saying that if you go close to your house, there'll always be a small market outside your house. There is a combination of 20, 30 type of things that you could do from there. Part of them are services, and part of them are actually goods that you can buy. It has electronics, it has electronics that you need at home. It has actually sometimes it has a clothing shop also, which you need regularly. It can be other things, right? It can be a puja shop. It can be so many things. They are changing that. And for a company like me, right, when our job is to empower any small business or a medium-sized business to do the same thing, or a brand to do the same thing. Now, if you think about it from a brand perspective or a small business perspective, they're actually capable of doing it, because they are present locally. And a lot of the businesses that we talk today are, for example, Mamaearth has stores across the country and across all major demand zones. Now, if tomorrow the goods have to be delivered from Mamaearth store, it can maybe not 8 minutes, but in say 15 minutes, the same supply chain can actually induce that demand and convert it into a sale. So our job is to build a platform which is more omni in nature, that you order from a store, you order from the app, or you order from, you may be in the city or you're outside the city, it might be coming from different locations. How do I link it back? How do I send the order to the right location so that the shipper or the brand or the business is able to process it? That is my job, linking that together. And how do I link it back to this? Then the last mile delivery gig manpower to be able to pick it up and deliver it, and make sure that all this is happening in a fashion which is acceptable for the customer.
See, one of the themes I'm sure from various conversations so far, you would see emerging that 10 years back, many of the Indian startups would look at the West and say, this business model, this consumer company is coming, whether it was the cabs, Uber started and then Ola started and so on and so forth. But now there are increasing trends, whether it is in the fintech space, we have seen with the likes of many UPI driven companies, whether it is Paytm, PhonePe, examples where India is actually the front. So probably if we go across the world, India will be number one in terms of the digital payment today. If we start to look at probably in just next couple of years, India might be ahead of most other countries in terms of the local deliveries that we might be doing in 10 minutes. Any other country may not be able to match up the number of deliveries.
I don't think anybody has done the analysis, but I think
we are already number one. Maybe, yeah.
Brazil is just about slightly ahead, but probably another 6 months.
Yeah, so you start to think that the country where you would think, okay, maybe digital was easy, but physical is generally hard because we think roads are not that well built out. But if we are the country which is having the maximum number of 10-minute delivery across the world, I mean, that's the level of innovation that the startups are able to do. And I'm sure, I mean, Abhiraj has traveled across most countries to figure out, I don't think there is a company which is equivalent of what urban company is able to do, organize 57,000 gig workforce, being able to deliver those services consistently in the homes of people, right? So that's the level and scale of disruption that already the startups have been doing, and this will continue to accelerate as we go to 2030. So I'll switch to the last question from each one of them and then open up for the crowd. So I think for Varun, I think you obviously are one of the largest D2C brand, but there are 100 plus D2C startups which have emerged over the last 5 years. Some of them you're also an investor. If there is a D2C startup founder out there, how would you tell him to think about it, come up with the space and go through the 0 to 100 journey in today's time and age?
Yeah, so I think firstly, as a country, we're growing. And with growth, there is also emotional and status growth that is associated with consumers. Because you have grown from one income level to another income level, you want to demonstrate that in the choices that you make. Right? Those choices could be the house that you live in, the car that you drive, the clothes that you wear, the beauty and personal care brands that you choose, the vacations that you take, right? All of them are part of those choices that you make to express, right, the fact that you have moved forward in life. Right? In the next couple of decades, right, I think that's going to be a very large theme which is going to define the Indian consumer, right? Where we will all want to express, right, the fact that we are more confident, right, of our choices and that we are moving forward. Right? And this journey, anywhere in the world, wherever it's sort of taken place, right, has led to a lot of brand creation, right? Because you want to express your individuality, you want to tell the world you're different from your earlier generations, right? And hence you want to choose brands, right, which become an expression of your individuality. Right? And hence there is a large scope of brand creation that will happen in the country. Right? But the one advice that I would leave anyone who's thinking about that, right, would have to be that in the end, brands stand for a certain idea and differentiation in the minds of consumers. That's what brands are. Right? They're intangible, DNAs. Right? And if you don't think hard about, right, how is it that you're going to be different from what has existed till today? Right? What is it that you're solving for, which is a clear consumer problem? Right? And how are you building a product, right, which actually talks to the first two questions, which is a problem that you solve and a proposition that you want to stand for. Right? A lot of time and effort needs to go into creating that product mix, rather than just sort of coming up with another Me Too mix. Right? Because then without having a differentiated proposition and attached product, right, you would not be able to stand apart from the sea of brands which are going to come in here. Right? So I think put a lot of effort into that, be very close to the consumer. Right? There is so much digital technology through which we can now, rather than asking consumers what they want, right? Because there is always a halo of what they say and what they actually do. Right? We're always politically correct when we are asked a question. Right? But it's really our actions that define what we really want. Right? And today those actions are visible in what we search for, right? The kind of content that we watch. Right? All of those are actually those subconscious actions which you can read and understand how the consumer is shaping. Right? And if you focus on those two pieces, right, then you can really build a brand which can last for decades. So I think that will be my advice.
Fantastic. Abhiraj, I'll ask you a slightly different question, and your closing remarks also on that. I think AI has been a buzz, and I'm sure urban company is having some secret cooked in for AI as well. If you can speak about how as a consumer brand and organization deploying AI today, and what do you see over the next 24 months for you?
I think to start with, on a lighter note, one good thing is we probably will be one of the last industries to be disrupted by AI. I think there is some distance before AI can fix your plumbing or give you a nice facial. But on a more serious note, the usual suspects, I would say. We are using AI applications and building some AI applications for largely a lot of work that was done manually inside the company. So I think in this sort of first wave, a lot of companies, including us, what we're trying to do is how do we automate using AI in a much more efficient fashion, bring down manual processes and reduce cost to serve. So, Copilot and CX support. Our engineering team is using the GitHub Copilot, which improves productivity by about 15-20%. We have a lot of audits that we used to do manually on jobs where partners would take photographs before, afters, etc. And then we would audit about a small percentage of them manually. Now through AI we can audit 100% of the jobs in an automated fashion. In fraud and platforms like ours, over time there's a lot of fraud that ends up happening. Again, we had certain manual checks and balances in place, replacing large portion of that through AI. On the consumer-facing front end, already actually on sort of the Urban Company app, most of the assets that you see are mid-journey AI generated. Content now is AI generated. Summary of reviews, so that you don't have to read all the reviews, you can get a quick summary. So lots of, I think, early basic use cases. They will probably occupy us for a good 12 to 18 months. There are a few other innovative projects as well, which I'll refrain from talking about. My team is excited by them.
So there's no robot coming home yet?
No, none of that fancy stuff yet.
Actually, I'll add to that with a slightly different perspective, right? I think, and I go to a lot of these forums where we are talking about AI and all of that. And I think as a country, we should avoid talking and promoting AI for a long time. And we should be talking about ML, and by ML I mean manual labor. We are a country of numbers. Right? We are a country with a lot of manpower, and our strength lies in that. And as much as possible, we need to talk about that. We need to put more and more people to work, and that is actually going to change the game for India. And, rather than just taking the narrative from US and Europe, where most of the core AI companies are based out of. And the more you adopt them, the more they make money, right? And the more our people get out of jobs. And so while it's a great technology to watch, but as a country, realizing our strength and doubling down on it is far more important. And like Abhiraj said, thankfully, we'll have companies like this which are employing hundreds of thousands of people and should continue to sort of do that. So we absolutely avoid AI in the company.
Fantastic. Over to you, Gautam. Last question. Logistics and supply chain is heart and backbone of everything that gets delivered and makes happen. And I already quizzed you that there is no 5-minute delivery coming in anytime soon. But for an entrepreneur in logistics and supply chain, what would you advise? Like, what are the opportunities that you see are still unsolved problems, and things that the entrepreneur should watch out if they are venturing into logistics and supply chain?
I think from the experience that we have built over, and we've been servicing largely e-commerce as businesses and retail and e-commerce. Let's say retail brands and e-commerce. That is the category that we've been servicing. In the last 7 to 8 years, what we've seen is that the base technology for running a good logistics business is now built, right? The also proven models of how supply chain functions. There are different models, and all those have been largely proven for, right? Apart from few technologies which are out there right now, which will get real in some time, is maybe a drone coming and delivering goods to your house. That is one bit of it. But beyond that, the supply chain by its design and its base technology is being created and formed now. I think the real value for anybody who's trying to venture into this business is it is still very disconnected from other things. For example, demand building back to basic logistics supply chain businesses, or enterprise resource planning softwares talking to these systems, or one system talking to another system. That has not happened very well. I think anybody who's venturing into this business has to think about how how these large marketplaces or how large businesses are typically able to marry back what the customer expect and what the actual delivery is. So I think that is one. The second is very important. Is there are there's one more thing which has happened in the country, and this is very nascent, and is that tier 2 and tier 3 has also become, they were always demand generators, but in the last few years that demand has gone up. We were all talking about disposable income at that level was increasing, but now that is transpiring into actually e-commerce purchases. That is one area where a lot of supply is still missing, and there the models of how you implant supply is going to be different. It's not going to be a rider sitting on a bike and delivering goods in a village. It has to be very different for it to be efficient, because India is still a lot of villages and they're not very closely knit to each other. They will need a very supply chain so that it's cost effective.
No, fantastic. So while the supply chains, the takeaway is while the supply chain has been starting to be built for urban India, there's a lot of Bharat where the supply chain has to be built, and it has to be built in a different form versus what has been built for the urban India. No, fantastic. With that, I'll open up the questions to the audience. I see a hand there. Will there be a mic that can go? I think there's a mic on the right. Yeah.
Hi, nice to meet all of you. See, at one point of time, you all would have created an MVP in your each business, and you would have established your business in your particular region. At some point, you would have decided you wanted to go to expand, so considering the market potential. How did you decide you have to go for the investor? And I just want to know, what is your experience after having an investor in your company? How did they add value to your company? Is it only money, or they came in and joined and helped you in setting up systems and process, and what else? Thank you.
So I think, firstly, you have to be clear that different businesses will require investment at different points in time and different amounts of investment in time. Some of it is affected by your own business model, and some of it is also externally driven. Because if you are in a space which requires capital and it is hyper-competed space, for example, I remember, I'm going to pick on you, when Abhiraj started the company and I started almost 6 months later than that, there was 150 plus startups like Urban Company which were there. And I think when you are in that hyper competition, you are required to scale up. You are required to make sure that capital is gravitated towards 1 or 2 players, because that's also starts to become differentiation, because you want to expand multiple places. You want to invest into marketing, building brand and things like that. So I think therefore every company's journey will be different and requirement of capital will be very different. So taking one playbook may not be relevant. I mean, I know of SaaS companies. I mean, Zoho is one of the classical examples. They are the poster child of never having taken money, or Zerodha never having taken money, right? So take your company, analyze the old school way, kind of competition set, where you want to be, what kind of investment will be required, what kind of time horizon, because there will be, if it is a great idea which can become a really large company, probably there are multiple people looking at it. The second part of the question, can investors add value? Yes, depending on the investors and the stage of the company and the kind of help that the founder may need. Sometimes investor can help towards just providing that marketing engine so that you are able to attract talent. Now that may be a very derived benefit, but it is also a benefit. Like if many of us, I think, are Axel, Sequoia or one of those brand name funded, I think if you are an Axel or a Sequoia funded company, there is a lot of talent which just feels that the credibility is there, the startup is going to survive, there is less risk to join, ESOPs have value. So that's also a indirect benefit that you get out of investors. And second, they have a benefit of looking at multiple companies, multiple competitors, evaluating what is the right way to think about P&L, things like that. So I think stage of the company, type of founder, they can add different value. You have to determine what is that you need. So late stage founders might need less of those directional values, but then younger founders might need more organization building to many other types of value as well. Another question, if someone can pass the mic.
Yeah, I have. Thank you. Thanks a lot for the conversation. I'm Abhishek. I'm a director at a sustainability-focused policy think tank. I actually wanted to take the conversation back to the theme of the summit, which is like, what is the role to responsibly shape the future, right, as startups? And while I think Abhiraj and Varun did touch upon the responsibility in different ways, but I wanted to sort of make it a little bit front and center. And two things, right? One, the jobs story. I mean, India adds almost 10 million people to its workforce every year, right? That's the pace at which we need to create jobs. And while I think the logistics companies, the companies like Urban Clap are creating a lot of jobs, but at the end of the day, it is still a 10,000 a month kind of a job, right? Like last year, I think Urban Companies' revenue was 637 crore. So divided by 57,000 people, on average 10,000 rupees a month.
I would think your average is 35, 40,000, right, or more.
Yeah, let me just make a small correction to that. So we as a company have been publishing the partner earnings index for the last 3 years. 6 earnings index have come out. The average partner makes 32,000 net of all costs. 637 crores last year was our 20% take rate that we keep.
Okay.
That's what we recognize as net revenue. So the actual amount that the customer pays is about 4 to 5 times more. Most of that goes into the pocket of but this is an important point because it's I think the broader narrative, and I can't speak for the entire ecosystem, but I can speak for myself. I think the broader narrative is, are these, really good jobs, or are they just jobs?
Yeah.
And the reality is that every professional-owned urban company today has access to a home loan, vehicle loan. They have life, health and accidental insurance free of cost. Many of them have family accidental insurance and health insurance. The average is 32,000. The top 20% make 42,000 plus. They have dignity of labor when they wear that uniform. Dignity that they were never accorded all these years. They have a career path. Out of the 400 trainers that are on my platform, 200 of them come from my own service professionals. They were service professionals on my platform who are now full-time employees. How will India change? By us taking the first step. Yes, we need 10 million jobs, but no one company can create 10 million. But I can create 50,000, he can create 50,000, he can create 50,000. That's how India will change, my friend.
Exactly. So this is really heartening to learn that, right? And a second point around sustainability, and I think this is probably a lot more pertaining to Mama Earth. How do we create many more Mama Earth really? I mean, how do we really inspire a lot many more new entrepreneurs to start focusing on sustainability first businesses?
Yeah, actually, success inspires success, right? So, I mean, like, the more we tell these stories, right, the more the consumers, as consumers, we choose companies which are trying to do the right thing, right? The more it will spread, right? Because finally, everyone wants to create sustainable, profitable businesses, right? And if they clearly see that the consumer is actually rewarding businesses which are choosing to do the right things, right? Automatically everyone would sort of shape those businesses. So I think that's what we all sort of need to do, recognize and respect and buy from businesses which are trying to do the right things.
But I would also, I think, just like Varun made an interesting point early on, that we have to be cognizant of the fact that there are a lot more people who need jobs in India versus the Western world. Similarly, I think as a country, we are not in the same state as a US or Europe, which can come up with ESG goals and say like, let's do XYZ to achieve the sustainability only goal. Because we still have to grow the economy first. Economy and job creation are still the probably number 1 and number 2 for the country, and number 3 becomes sustainability. I think for the stage of country's economy, number of people below the poverty line, I think India is doing a fantastic job already on sustainability. But we should not aspire to become that we are like, we compromise our GDP growth or compromise many of the other like goals in terms of job creation because there might be a Western goal around sustainability with their own economic growth.
Yeah, but Rahul, I would like to add that both can go hand in hand. Right? There is no need to make a choice here. Right? For example, India today has the largest reverse plastic pickup system in the world. Nobody in the world is there so much plastic recycling pickup system that is happening as much as it's happening in India. Right? And all of that happens through job creation. Right? So not necessarily it has to be that ESG is a spend. Right? It's a way of life. Right? And if you start living that way of life, it can lead to more job creation as well. So I think if we choose to do both the things together, right, probably we won't sway so extreme, right, that we need to correct later the way developed economies are doing.
Yeah, hi, Rima here, and thank you so much. It was fantastic listening to you all. So it may be not the question, maybe not relevant to what you have just spoken. But since I work, again, I'll just give it briefly that I work fostering industry-academia partnerships, and I'm representing IIT Kanpur here. So my question, and yeah, I'm aware of. So my question is, because day in, day out, we are interacting with industry and a lot of startups as well. And yes, no doubt that the startup ecosystem is thriving a lot. But at the same time, a lot of startups are coming in. Like, for instance, if we talk about the drone ecosystem, right? You have hundreds of startups coming in. Now, where is the differentiator? What is the differentiator factor? How one startup is being differentiated from the other. And there's a lot of investment coming from the government as well, through the policies and putting in the money into the startup ecosystem. So my question is, if any suggestions from your side, is there a way that you can put in certain checks? Or is there a way that we can really, because not out of these 100, maybe 1 or 2 will really are actually doing some great work, in terms of technology breakthrough. So what can be done to actually push in or bring in the startups that are actually, creating something breakthrough, doing some breakthrough work? So that's my question. Why? Because there's also a lot which is being at stake. So if any suggestions, any remarks from your side?
I think startups, like almost everything, follow the Darwin's theory of evolution. Right? So whoever are the strongest, most innovative, and solve the problems that are out there in the best manner, right, are the ones that survive, and that's the story. Right? A lot of them take chance, right? But then a few of them automatically get funneled down towards success. Can we increase that success rate? And probably yes, a lot of ecosystem work that's happening, support that's happening, the fact that there is so much learning, knowledge sharing that is happening today, which wasn't the case earlier. And access to some of this content which is freely available in digital, right, should allow you the success should go up a little. Right? But finally, it'll always be that funnel, right, in which the best will survive.
The outcome won't be the same if you have 2 or you have it has to be very different. It has to be real competition. There has to be innovation. If there are not that many people for an industry as big as robotics and drones, you will not find the innovation coming through after that end of 2-3 years. The industry needs competition to be able to foster the real one.
As a generic academia industry, I would say many a times it is very important to understand a startup succeeds and scales because of bringing together both R&D, sales and marketing, capital investment that may be required. And a founder, I think that's probably a difference between a founder who might have built an equally good product but not able to scale up versus a founder who is build maybe slightly inferior product sometimes and is able to scale up. So that recognition of that fact that it is very important that Startup can only scale up when you bring all those things together. And you can't just live in your own bubble saying that I have the best product and world will come to me. I mean, without marketing, it may not happen. So, and there is a time window for every product and every innovation. So to the earlier point, which was on our funding, that recognition, it's very important that even if the startup is incubated out of academia, academia cannot treat it as another R&D project. And the student may not be aware. And you need to instill that there is an industry out there, you have to go compete, you have to build all those capabilities without which that window might be lost. I mean, drone window might be next 2 years, whichever startup scales up, I mean, an equivalent good product may die because they did not scale up.
Hi, I'm Lezo from Nagaland. I run a business incubator in the Northeast. And this is not about business or product or service, it's more about personal question. As we grow, it gets a little more difficult with investment, human resource and all that. I just want to just get an insight from any one of you, or each one of you actually, what's been some personal, a habit or something that has really made you just keep innovating and pushing yourself so that we can take some input from that. It's more about a personal question.
I think, every entrepreneur is different that way, right? Because there is a source of energy that we each need to sort of dig into to be resilient and persistence throughout these journeys, right? And but I think if there's one common trait that I've seen almost in all entrepreneurs that I meet, there's a certain level of paranoia, and that paranoia is around and how do we get better than what we were yesterday. Right? Also a paranoia around knowing that you have disrupted someone else or certain industry. Right? And that knowledge also creates a paranoia someone can disrupt you. Right? If you're not always, always looking at what is it that you need to innovate, what is it that you need to do. So I think it is more that drive and that paranoia, which then gets, of course, it's a bit infectious. So it flows through your organization as well, which keeps you ahead of the curve. And when that paranoia dies, then it's a problem.
Okay, we can take the last question on the back. Yeah.
Hello to all. I'm just reading that co-creating the future responsibility and role of a business. So my question is to urban company. I want to know how many competitors you have in the market. Also, because we know there are individual companies. I'll talk vis-a-vis. I should not use the word housekeeping, but housekeeping, upkeep, maintenance, which is universal. Every household needs it, industries need it, businesses need it. So I want to know how much you're investing in upping the skills of people, because I live 6 months in Mumbai, 6 months in Delhi, and rest of the world I keep traveling. The standards of workmen in Mumbai it's like 40-60 vis-a-vis Delhi. So I just want to know what sort of, Mumbai is like too good, and Delhi, we sort of get scared hiring people from your company. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I'll be brief in my response. To the second part of your question, I think investments in training, upskilling, both technical skills and soft skills is very important. And typically, in the Indian context, I spoke earlier, a lot of the workforce that we get is from the unorganized sector. We have to make a lot of investment, which till date is something we do free of cost. And we run over 200 training centers. We have an in-house team of 400 trainers. So far already, We have trained over 100,000 people, and more of our trainings are moving away from being finishing schools to intensive training programs, because now we are attracting people who don't have a background in the trade, they're freshers. So that's a very important investment from our side, and it's not just one time, it's ongoing. So there is continuous training, upgradation, and that's critical. We try to maintain a standard across the country, and hopefully, between cities, that doesn't deviate a lot. It's a fairly competitive space. It doesn't seem to be the case outside in, but it's a fairly competitive space. There are lots of smaller players, even larger players in verticals that we operate in, and we compete with a lot of specialists within categories, as well as smaller companies. So there is a lot of competition that's out there.
So we all know that all of y'all have been funded by PE funds and investors. In case there's a bootstrap, do you have any inputs to provide to raise the scale while spending it on marketing, or how to manage your finances when it's a bootstrap company?
You have done more bootstrap.
I guess there's always a stage before reaching to the investors where you are putting in your own money, or
Oh no,
you're
yeah,
trying to work out.
we started with our provident fund, so like it was the last mile that we had to sort of pull out from. And see, bootstrapping, right, is a great way to build a high ownership business, right? You will eventually, of course, end up owning your entire business, right? Because when you raise funds, you have to dilute your ownership. You have to sell, a part of your company to raise funds, right? But it might not be the fastest way to get to where you want to reach. Right? It also doesn't allow you to take as much risks as you can with capital, right? So I think both are sort of, like Rahul had mentioned, right? That both are ways to sort of do. If you've chosen to build something bootstrapped, right? Then of course you have to be very cognizant of capital. Right? Before even talking about marketing capital, P&L capital, working capital is something that you have to be far more cognizant about. Right? And how do you manage working capital? Ideally, how do you become a negative working capital business? Right? Because that allows you to then run your business on external vendors' capital rather than your own capital. Right? And it actually ends up generating, right, more cash for you to deploy into other sort of places. So I think as a bootstrap business, the first thing that you should be trying for is becoming a negative working capital business. Right? The second thing that you should try for is becoming a low capex business. Right? The lower you will need to invest in hard assets and capex. Right? The more you would have, right, to invest in growth areas, right? And with both these sorted, right, and your engine churning the right kind of margins, right, then your P&L can fund your growth, right? But your growth would be decided by how much can your P&L fund it, right? And hence one will need to be far more patient, right, and not get swayed by the FOMO of everyone raising funds around you, and you not raising funds, right? Because while they're raising funds, they're also diluting, right? And while you might be building slow, 10 years down the line, you might have much better ownership, right? And probably a similar scale. So I think that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, panelists, for an enriching discussion. Now, can we have a round of applause for the panelists, please? Would request Mr. Rahul Garg to present the token of appreciation to the panelists, please. To Mr. Abhiraj Singh Bahal. To Mr. Varun Alag.
Thank you.
To Mr. Gautam Kapoor. Would now request Mr. Behr to kindly present it to Mr. Rahul Garg. We will be starting with the next session shortly. Kindly be seated